Thoreau, the Futurist and the Emerging Human. A vision of humanity living in balance. By Connie Baxter Marlow. Colorado Rocky Mountain School, Carbondale, Colorado. With Andrew Cameron Bailey as Henry David Thoreau, Richard Lyon as Joseph Polis, Thoreau's Indian guide. Commentary by Connie Baxter Marlow. Readings from Thoreau's Indians, 1,000 Indian-related references in Thoreau's writings. Set: Thoreau and Polis sitting around the campfire after a long day's paddle on the Allagash River in the Maine wilderness. Year: 1857. Connie Baxter Marlow's Thesis and Comments. These ideas are ideas that can change your lives, really. You know, this Thoreau person really led the way for humanity through civil disobedience, because he applied this stuff to society and his life to society. You know, he went to jail for not paying his taxes in support of the, you know, to rebel against the Mexican War. So this guy did it, and he inspired Martin Luther King and Gandhi. So we can all do it, and he hoped that we would, and saw that we would. And now with Occupy Wall Street and Occupy America, you know, people are standing up in a nonviolent way to say, hey, you know, life's more than this. What we've created, you know, in our with these logical minds that have operated on these, basically coming from this little teeny box of the scientific paradigm that's so separate from the rest of creation, that now it's time to stand up and become the true human.
Connie Baxter Marlow has spent the last 2 decades in close association with visionary Native American elders throughout the United States and Mexico: the Hopi, Maya, Tarahumara, Huichol, Wabanaki, Lakota, Ute, and most recently the Bushmen of the Kalahari in South Africa. She feels that in the cosmology of the indigenous people are clues to many of the missing pieces of the prevailing paradigm, information about the true nature of the universe. It is her understanding that humanity is about to make an evolutionary leap in consciousness to an understanding of the loving, interconnected, abundant universe, and will align itself to this reality and subsequently choose to bring peace on earth in our lifetime. Connie believes that when we come together with the indigenous peoples as equals, as family, and we each open our hearts and our minds to the other, the melding of our gifts will bring a new perspective that is invisible at this time. To her, this new perspective will allow humanity to see the path to true unity, peace, and freedom. Connie finds Henry David Thoreau an important bridge to this shift in consciousness, and has produced a film series, The American Evolution, Voices of America, which weaves a tapestry of paradigm-shifting ideas with a visionary Thoreau scholar, a Penobscot Indian elder, a Muslim imam, and other important thinkers addressing these ideas. Connie is a Baxter of Maine. Her family bought and gave Mount Katahdin and 200,000 acres to the people of Maine to be held forever wild as a public park. It was on Katahdin that Thoreau experienced a life-changing epiphany. Andrew Cameron Bailey will represent Thoreau himself today, reading from Thoreau's Indians, the 1,000 Indian-related references in Thoreau's writings compiled by Bradley P. Dean, Ph.D. Richard Lyon, local actor, represents Joe Polis, Thoreau's Indian guide, also reading from Thoreau's Indians. According to Ralph Waldo Emerson and others, Joe Polis was one of 3 in Thoreau's pantheon of heroes, along with John Brown and Walt Whitman.
We are here today to touch on a couple of little-known aspects of the life and works of Henry David Thoreau, American author and visionary, his lifelong fascination with the American Indian, and his life-changing epiphany on Mount Katahdin in Maine. I believe these aspects, once understood, will be significant for humanity's evolution of consciousness. You have all seen clips from the American Evolution Voices of America series. I hope you all did your homework. Which cover many more details on these subjects, with the late Brad Dean, visionary Thoreau scholar, Richard Smith, Thoreau interpreter, and Arnie Neptune, Penobscot elder, discussing these matters. The simplest way to cut to the chase of what I'm driving at today is to say that we will be addressing the mystical nature of the universe. Quote, "The universe is wider than our views of it," wrote Thoreau, end quote, wrote Thoreau in the last chapter of Walden. This wider reality is the one we'll be looking at. Why? Because I believe that humanity is about to take an evolutionary leap into seeing and experiencing this reality, just as the transcendentalists, Thoreau and Emerson, did, and the mystics, visionaries, and indigenous peoples of the world do. Thoreau described himself as, quote, "a mystic, a transcendentalist, and a natural philosopher to boot." He's widely recognized as a natural philosopher and a transcendentalist. It is his vision as a mystic that has heretofore gone unacknowledged. Let's define a few terms. Mystical, of or stemming from direct communion with ultimate reality or God. Of or having spiritual reality or import not apparent to the intelligence or senses. Transcendentalist, a literary and philosophical movement asserting the existence of an ideal spiritual reality transcending the empirical and knowable through intuition. As Brad Dean indicated in the film, Thoreau's lifelong fascination with the Indian led him to become one of the top ethnologists of his time. The study of the manners and customs of the Indians of the Algonquin group previous to contact with the civilized man was his primary scientific focus. Today, we're going to take Thoreau the next step by looking at him, his life, and his work from a different perspective, from a future Thoreau envisioned looking back. In his writing, Thoreau alludes to the future, to the possible human, and to the importance of the message carried by the arrowhead from the indigenous mind. We're going to show you a Thoreau and the Indian he experienced, give you some ideas to ponder, and suggest a synthesis from which we can all open to a larger reality and take the human potential up a notch to the place Thoreau dedicated his life to modeling. Many of the quotes you'll be hearing here are in the full-length part 2 of the American Evolution series. Thoreau made 3 excursions to the Maine woods, where he hired Indian guides to study their ways.
I narrowly watched his motions and listened attentively to his observations, for we had employed an Indian mainly that I might have the opportunity to study his ways.
On his first excursions to Mount Katahdin in September of 1846, the Indian guide he hired, Louis Neptune, failed to appear. Thoreau and his companions ended up climbing Katahdin without a guide. And on this climb, Thoreau experienced his life-changing epiphany, which is eloquently expressed in the controversial contact passage found in his essay Katahdin in the Maine Woods. And if you saw the film clips, you will have seen that contact passage and the significance of it. On Thoreau's second excursion to Maine, he hired Joe Attian, son of the governor, as his guide on a moose hunting expedition in 1853. And in 1857, on his last trip to Maine, he hired Joe Polis as his guide. Thoreau died 5 years later in 1862 after taking a trip to Minnesota, where he also explored the Indian culture. The relationship that developed between Thoreau and Polis during his last Maine excursion was to solidify in Thoreau's mind the importance of the Indian experience. Thoreau had been fascinated by the Indian from childhood. Thoreau saw that the Indian could see what he could see. Thoreau, as a mystic and a transcendentalist, resonated to an expanded reality. He possessed the ability to see and sense the spirit that is at the essence of all life. And from this vantage point, he could envision a society made up of the true human, acting from a connectedness that is foreign to most people at this time. Why was Joe Polis one of 3 of Thoreau's heroes? Because, as Brad Dean points out, Joe exemplified Thoreau's dream of the synthesis of the mystical indigenous connection to nature to what I call the conscious loving universe, with the worldly man who could function in the modern times, exhibiting capabilities which I see as the emerging human, whose choices will take humanity closer to realizing our full potential as loving beings walking in balance. To me, this is the evolutionary leap of humanity. Thoreau saw and bemoaned the limitations of the modern society, and he resonated to the expanded reality of the mystic, and often experienced the natural world the way the Indian did. He dreamed of a future that would bridge these realities, and Joe Polis symbolized this possibility. In the Voices of America series, Part 1, Brad Dean notes that Thoreau saw a future in which humanity connects with its highest conscience, and writes of this in Civil Disobedience. Quote, "That government is best which governs least. Carried out, it finally amounts to this: that government is best which governs not at all." End quote. Brad states, "If you don't mind me putting a parenthesis to Henry David Thoreau, what you need to say is, quote, that government is best which governs not at all, because in such a government, all the citizens govern themselves." Thoreau sees the possibility of a society of humans living in balance. Brad goes on to say, quote, "What Thoreau wants is self-governors. Everyone is their own king and governor and Congress and Senate, and you do not need laws to oppress you because you have a law inwardly that manifests itself in your conduct outwardly." I will venture to say that there is a direct link between humanity's expanded mystical connection to the universe and its access to its highest conscience, its divine nature. That the message carried to the future by the arrowhead is the possibility of life lived in alignment with the oneness of creation and the sacredness of all things, concepts that lie at the foundation of indigenous cosmology. In a little book called Mystics as a Force for Change, an Indian named Ghost states, "Mysticism proposes a revolution from above and by consciousness. To say technology is the grammar of the future is dangerous nonsense. Technique and transcendence must learn to work together. That would be the beginning of the total man and totality thinking. And the individuals who will most help humanity in the hour of crisis are those who recognize a willed change from within as a step to total change in our relationship with reality, the harmony of the whole. The issue is plain. What is the true nature of things, and how do we embody it in our social living?" Albert Einstein stated that no problem was ever solved in the same consciousness in which it was created. We have built a house of cards on a false foundation of false assumptions that our logical minds have, given the information we have, responded to logically, and have gotten us to where we are right now. Once we have come to grasp the correct, accurate information about the nature of the universe, our logical minds will take us to peace on earth, will have us bringing peace on earth. Thoreau states, quote, "The Indian begins where we leave off and seems so much the divine, and anything that fairly excites our admiration expands us," end quote. That's from an August 18, 1857 letter to Harrison Blake, written shortly after Thoreau's final excursion to the Maine woods. Now, Thoreau and Polis will speak for themselves. We will take you on a little adventure into the Maine woods as they sit around the campfire after a long day's paddle on the Allagash River in the Maine wilderness. This experience with Polis was so significant to Thoreau that he would not immediately publish his account of the excursion for fear of offending Polis. On his deathbed, Thoreau's last words were Indian and moose. Thoreau and the Indian transcend the experience of everyday man. Thoreau saw salvation in this transcendence. It allowed him to see the human potential. He was not, however, a stranger to the shadow side of the Indian nor of the white man. He had an extraordinary insight into the human condition, its limitations, and its possibilities. His dream was to inspire his readers, the human race, to a higher place. The truth will set us free. And each race must acknowledge the dichotomy of its light and its shadow. Thoreau expresses this dichotomy in the following passage.
What an evidence it is, after all, of civilization, or of a capacity for improvement, that savages like our Indians, who in their protracted wars stealthily slay men, women, and children without mercy, what a wonderful evidence it is, I say, of their capacity for improvement, that even they can enter into the most formal compact or treaty of peace, burying the hatchet, etc., and treating with each other with as much consideration as the most enlightened states. You would say that they had a genius for diplomacy as well as for war. Consider that Iroquois torturing his captive, and now behold him in the council chamber, where he meets the representatives of the hostile nation to treat of peace, conducting with such perfect dignity and decorum, betraying such a sense of justness. These savages are equal to us civilized men in their treaties, and I fear not essentially worse in their wars.
Every race, every human has a light and a shadow side. We cannot burden anyone with the idea that he has no shadow. Each race has passed through dark hours in our evolution. Without rose-colored glasses, Thoreau could see beyond our limitations to the higher truths, because he shared a reality with the Indian from which he could see possibilities. Joe will now read Thoreau's writings that indicate this transcendence. I thought I might tell you a tiny bit of information you might enjoy. How Walden Pond got its name. Thoreau tells us in Walden, quote, "My townsmen have all heard the tradition. The oldest people tell me that they heard it in their youth, that anciently the Indians were holding a powwow upon a hill here, which rose as high into the heavens as the pond now sinks deep into the earth. And they used much profanity, as the story goes, though this vice is one of which the Indians were never guilty. And while they were thus engaged, the hill shook and suddenly sank, and only one old squaw named Walden escaped, and from her the pond was named." Henry will continue with a few thoughts on the Indian. Thoreau's political life, his life in society, his role as an author, exemplify the mystical connection to the universe. Thoreau was the possible human. His ability to see and experience an expanded reality drove his actions on a day-to-day basis. He acted according to his inner knowing, his conscience, and changed the world through modeling and communicating what he saw and resonated to. He dreamt of a nation of individuals operating in freedom that would actualize on earth the highest human potential and power of the universe. Thoreau desperately wanted the world to see what he could see, and believed that one day we would. It was only a matter of humanity's waking up to its true nature. On the title page of Walden, Thoreau wrote, quote, "I do not propose to write an ode to dejection, but to brag as lustily as Chanticleer in the morning, if only to wake my neighbors up," end quote. I, for one, believe that Thoreau, the futurist, saw, sensed the evolution of consciousness that humanity was to undergo, the merging of the inner and outer self, and he knew he was a front runner. It's time for the vision of Thoreau, for the cosmology of the American Indian, for the heart of humanity, and the true destiny of America to become actualized through our day-to-day choices as we bring peace on earth, heaven on earth. New earths, new themes expect us. Henry David Thoreau. Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen. We have a few minutes if you guys have any questions of any of us on these ideas, and how did it go for you? Oh, thanks. Was this something that you could take in, or was it boring? Did it work for you guys?
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Because these ideas are ideas that can change your lives, really. You know, this Thoreau person really led the way for humanity through civil disobedience, because he applied this stuff to society and his life to society. You know, he went to jail for not paying his taxes in support of the, to rebel against the Mexican War. So this guy did it, and he inspired Martin Luther King and Gandhi. So we can all do it, and he hoped that we would, and saw that we would. And now with Occupy Wall Street and Occupy America, you know, people are standing up in a nonviolent way to say, hey, you know, life's more than this. What we've created, you know, in our with these logical minds that have operated on these, basically coming from this little teeny box of the scientific paradigm that's so separate from the rest of creation, that now it's time to stand up and become the true human. So do you guys have anything to say?
Well, let's see, any feedback?
I don't see any hands.
Come on,
anybody
there's
desperate?
all kinds of excited people out there. Can't wait to see. Anything? Connie mentioned several times the phrase civil disobedience. Anybody know what those two words mean in reference to Thoreau?
A book called Civil Disobedience.
Right, exactly. There's actually a very short book that Thoreau wrote called Civil Disobedience. It's an extraordinary sort of declaration of independence for the individual. It's really powerful, and I would highly recommend that. So just whenever she mentioned in civil disobedience, he said she's referring to the book.
Yeah, and he believed in the power of the individual, and each of us coming from this higher conscience, which we made very clear in this. But that's the key, is to each of us go inside and listen to that little voice inside that's telling us what to do. And it may be totally contrary to the consensus reality that we've all been raised in. And there's something new coming on the planet. It's up to us to bring it to pass with our choices. It's not just coming, it's coming through the human heart, and us resonating to it, listening to our inner promptings, honoring our hearts with courage and action. It's not just sitting and thinking, oh, I know something, I wish I could do this. It's saying, I'm doing this. And that way you set everyone around you free, because you have modeled the courage to act according to your heart instead of what a fear-based paradigm has conditioned you to think is the proper way to act. Now, Thoreau has a great quote Pardon?
Wouldn't that bring kind of an anarchy?
Well,
Do you think it would? Because if everybody just went around doing
right,
what
in
came
this,
to their head, I mean,
right, but see, in this conditioned frequency, in this, with these assumptions that we have, and how we've been conditioned, yes, because we're operating out of fear, out of greed, out of basically fear.
Yeah.
Okay? But when we get to this place that Thoreau's talking about, you see, that's the point we're trying to make with this thing, is that when you're in your higher conscience, that we're all, once we all get to that place, it's not going to be anarchy. It's going to be, and I asked an Indian elder, because I spent a lot of time with native elders, and I asked her that very question. And she said, no, because I said, is there going to be a leader of this transformation, you know? And she said, no. And I said, doesn't that mean anarchy? And she said, no, it means we're each going to take our piece of the hoop of life. We're going to fit it together with everyone else, and we're going to create the hoop of life.
Do you think we're too late as a society for that?
Heavens, no.
No?
No,
No, man.
we're just
This
starting
is
to wake
it.
up. We're just starting to wake up.
This is it.
May I comment
Yeah,
on that
please.
further?
And it looks like we have a question over there. So
But go
let's hear from Joe first.
Oh, well, you know, Thoreau lifts up this synchronicity he sees between the Native American spirituality and transcendentalism. And there are other traditions too which have looked at the universe from what would be called an esoteric point of view, which is not based out of fear, but is based out of a vision of wholeness. So that rather than myself being a separate human being who's sort of seeking to attach myself to something greater, the assumption would be that we are already the divine wholeness. You know, the divine wholeness, the completeness, which creates us, the energy that sustains us, which we're not in control of and didn't, you know, we didn't make ourselves, right? That's already fully in us. So it's rather a question of waking up, right, to the realization that we are already that which we've thought we need to seek.
Right,
And if I am the vibration of the harmony out of which I'm created and which has ordered all things, then my own surrender to my higher nature is that I will always be in alignment, right, with the passage of higher vision. And you know, many traditions have practices, affirmations or meditation systems or raising Kundalini yoga or doing ritual or shamanic journeys where one can achieve this consciousness and realize that the Hindu formula is we are that. You know, whatever it is that we think is the divine completeness, we're already it. And it's a question not of operating out of fear and separation to try and get it. It's a question of letting go of the illusions, which are fear and survival based, that keep us from realizing we're already it. Thoreau makes the point that the Native American people live in that consciousness, you know, that I am already immanently one with all things and one with nature, and so I know the medicine of all the plants, you know, and I can see things that the rational consciousness doesn't. Does that make sense to you?
Would it take a lifetime to get to that point? Like, because as an Indian, you grow up, I have no idea. I feel you grow up in the wild, learning about all the different plants as medicines and being one with the wild and stuff. And like, as society today, we grow up with Xboxes and PlayStations.
Right.
So would it, like, are we too late to, like, because you need to spend a lifetime getting to that higher
Well,
knowledge?
Not at all.
I have an answer.
Yeah.
But
I would say, and this is a big subject, and we could
Quantum.
spend the next several hours discussing exactly that point.
Mm.
I believe we live in a time right now where, just for example,
it can happen.
Henry David Thoreau was a very unusual person. He actually studied the Indians. In those days, nobody thought they had anything to bring. We're now looking to all these other cultures, these indigenous cultures. We're learning a lot from them. And and it's about, we white people have a lot to bring to it. we humans are evolving to a whole new phase, and I don't want to miss this young person.
Okay, but I want to say
Can
something.
there's a
Can I
question
just say
over there.
something
Yeah.
to you and to all of you? You have it all inside of you now,
That's right.
okay? And there's a veil that's lifting. There's been a veil, a thick veil between you and your true self and the true nature of the universe, but that veil is thinning and lifting. All you have to do is give permission, okay? Ask, and you shall receive. Just give permission, know it's possible. Hopefully we've opened your hearts and minds to possibilities, okay? No, it sits inside of you. It can be instantaneous. It doesn't take any training whatsoever. It's what's up on the planet right now. You guys came, got born when you did, you chose it, you're here, and it's just this far away. It's right, as close to you as your juggler, right? But let's,
I just,
Can-
we're kind of running.
I know.
I know it. I think there was one question I didn't want to lose in there. Is that okay?
Yeah, can I just, before we take that question?
Yeah.
Once we're done, I'm just gonna ask for a few people to stay and help pack up here.
Is there another
and,
group coming in
There's
here?
not another group coming in, but we'll just help you to pack up.
Okay.
your
That's
stuff.
okay.
And I'll
we'll
give
be
you
fine.
guys a late note. So let's have Jane's question and then we kind of have to wrap. Are you sure?
Did it get answered?
Well, not really. I have to be like, at least for myself, when people let go, normally hate and greed comes out. It takes a constant struggle with that inside yourself to become a good human being. I don't feel like goodness exists inside people. If goodness was our nature, we would have been killed by wolves when we were evolving. All animals on Earth are built to survive and kill other life. I mean, like, if humans were a peaceful society, we just wouldn't have evolved at all. Humans, in our evolution, we survived by taking advantage of other animals, taking advantage of our surroundings, and we see that in our society today. That's what it's based around. Exploiting our surroundings and the people around us to put ourselves higher than them. I think that's what exists inside us, and we need to be grown up in a society that rejects that to truly evolve out of it. So, I think it's the other way around.
Well, we as a species are evolving,
Choices
and
to be
those fear-based assumptions that you just described very graphically are no longer relevant. We don't need them anymore. There are very few wolves right outside the door. There are scary neighbors or people on the other side of some border who share the same fearful assumptions that we share. It's time for that stuff to go away. That is no longer relevant to current society, and if we don't wake up, we're in big trouble.
But once we understand that we're all one, that fear of that neighbor goes away. Okay, we've been operating from a fear energy, okay, which is changing. The earth is going into a higher place, a higher energy, so that playing out that fear energy of separation, he's different from me, so I'm scared of him, or I'm going to hoard my stuff because there isn't enough stuff, and if that guy gets my stuff, then my kids aren't going to survive, or I'm not going to survive. Those are fear-based assumptions that it's a scarce universe, which isn't true. I mean, so this is a very deep subject, guys.
It's a huge. Actually, this is what we write books about, and this is what Connie and I teach. We actually work on exactly that.
We have a workshop on Saturday called the Trust Frequency.
It's what we do. It's called the Trust Frequency. Yeah.
Well, we're leaving, but we're coming back. I raised
We're
my
back and
3
forth
kids
all the
here.
time.
My daughter actually went to CRMS, but yeah, we're in and out. But we're giving a workshop on Saturday. You ought to come if you can. All day Saturday down at 3rd Street Center.
Just wait.
But
on behalf of the class, I want to thank you, Connie, Andrew, and Richard, and this is just a little thank you card with the classmate.
oh, thanks.
Thank you.
So we got
Thanks for
another round
coming
of
and
applause.
listening. It'd be great fun to come back and have a discussion with you guys.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah, I'll be back at Christmas for 3 weeks. I don't know when your vacation is, but maybe we could sneak something.
As you can see, it opens up a lot of the deepest questions.
And it has to do with our assumptions about the nature of the universe, which is what I pointed out in this thing. That our logical minds have responded to a certain set of assumptions that are actually erroneous. They're actually 180 degrees off, exactly the opposite of what the true nature of the universe is. Okay? So we'll leave you with that. And you can go to our thetrustfrequency.net. It's a website where we examine these current assumptions and replace them with what we consider more accurate assumptions about the nature of the universe that comes from quantum science and indigenous cosmology. So try that out, thetrustfrequency.net.